Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast.
Welcome to Plates and Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Bob King. Coach King is the owner and operator of King Sports Training. King played college football at Texas Tech University. He went on to be the strength and conditioning coach for the Dallas Mavericks, Dallas Burn, now FC Dallas, assistant strength and conditioning coach for the Dallas Cowboys, and push coach for the U.S. Skeleton Team. King was the first strength and conditioning coach in Dallas Mavericks history, and he was a contributing author for Condition the NBA Way. King served as a push coach for the Skeleton at the 2002 Winter Olympics, where they won Olympic gold in the men's skeleton, women's skeleton, and silver in the women's skeleton. His list of accolades include 3 Super Bowl championships, 3 Olympic medalists, 7 years in the NBA, 7 years in the MLS, among countless other professional athletes across various sports. So welcome to the show, Coach.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Man, I've been following your stuff on TikTok quite a while. It's kind of a weird spot to reach out to somebody, but you answered, so here we are.
Yeah, that's a great platform. We've found that people can see what we do and get some information. Hopefully we're helping somebody somewhere get something better done that day. So it's been really good for us.
Now, as I was researching your stuff, I just found this was crazy how you were able to do this, but you were able to spend your whole life in Texas and still coach at the highest level possible. How did that work out?
I tell you what, I tell people this all the time, that I am the luckiest guy on the planet. I'm the product of timing. I started out, I was coaching high school football and track. And like anything in anybody's world, you meet somebody and then they say, hey, I got somebody you need to talk to. And so the introductions continued. And about the product of timing, I had been working with a guy that had the Dallas Maverick connections. And at that time, my profession, our world, was not familiar to the NBA. Guys had a personal trainer, and there are like 3 or 4 teams in the league had a full-time strength or even a part-time strength guy. And so the owner of the time, Dallas Mavericks, and the general manager were very forward-thinking. And so I got an introduction and an interview, and that opened the door to be the Mavericks' first strength coach. And so it was a great time because we're all learning. The players are getting used to me and I'm getting used to them. And you learn a lot fast when you go to pro sports. The learning curve and the cram courses are right in front of you, and that's the players.
Looking at NBA strength and conditioning, I noticed like on The Last Dance, when you watch Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, how small they were in the beginning of their career and how big they were at the end. It's like, It looked like strength and conditioning really involved in there somewhere and changed the landscape of basketball.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And the thing about, I guess, any athlete, but especially at the pro level, is they're always looking over the fence. And it's like, hey, what are they doing? And they want to keep up with the Joneses. And that's what prompted all that. And on a side note to that strength and conditioning and what you just said, the players go through a maturation of second level, third level, or whatever it is. And so when you play a pro sport and you're pushing and shoving against a guy that's your size or bigger night after night after night, it's just like a body weight workout, for the whole year. And then what guys found out was, when the season's over, put the ball down, walk away, see you in November. And then they found out that there was somebody working out and they couldn't keep up with that guy unless they did the same thing, and the dominoes just fell. And then here we are. We're all working out and saying, look, I promise, the weightlifting is not going to mess up your shot. And if nothing else, it'll increase your range. And they bought into it, and off we went.
Yeah, it's amazing. They're so competitive at that level. If they think that somebody's getting even a little bit of an edge, they're going to change everything they do.
That's right. And so they, just to go through the kind of the conclusion of the story, they got into the weight room, got as aggressive as I would let them, because I wanted to cap it. They had room to grow. I mean, they're basketball players, long levers, and not a lot of muscular development yet coming out of college. And so we had room to grow. And I'll never forget this, the pivotal story about, okay, we have arrived. I had a couple of free agents come in and some guys that had a little weightlifting experience from college. We're working out, warming up in the weight room in the arena before a game. I'm talking about a half hour before tip-off. and the guys are in there messing around. I got my big guys in there. The 6'9" and up guys are in there warming up. And Bob, put 185 on the bench. Okay, fine, that's good. Just get a little warm up. And the next guy comes in. Now they're competing. Bob, put 225 on the bench. I go, no, we're not having a 225 rep test 10 minutes before tip off. That was a good problem to have, as opposed to just running every time the weight room door opened because they were afraid. Now I have to run them out. So it worked out real well toward the end of my stay there.
Now, I've heard all that at the high school level. If you get them too big, they can't jump, they can't move, all the different things. We've done some tests out here where we just put like weight vests on to see how much weight it would take before their vertical drop or their vertical jump decreased.
Yeah.
We've had kids stack 30, 40 pounds and they, that's dead weight. That's not helping them at all. And I really haven't seen a huge decrease. You're going to see some, an inch and a half. But so at that level, as you got the guys bigger, did you see increased verticals?
Well, the funny thing about it was that's kind of a qualified yes and no, because here's the deal. We tested all that, and there was that the NBA, when their early days of their combine work with incoming players, the average vertical was about 28 inches. And what you find out is that, number one, they're big guys. Number two, they're big guys. They don't have to jump very high. I mean, some of them would just jump 2 inches and dunk. And so the vertical became less of a landmark, because if you were a shot blocker, you were probably 7 feet tall. You probably had the wingspan of a 747 and could jump out the gym. And those guys were, freaks of nature. But I've had 7-footers. I had one guy who was a 7-footer that was just so bent out of shape that he played center because he was 7 feet tall. He goes, Bob, just because it's 7 feet from my head to the floor, I'm not a center. Look at my arms. And he put his arms down, and he had alligator arms. And so he had everything going against him as a center. He wanted to play forward so bad because he could turn and shoot. And so you get these basketball players that have hands and fingers that go below their knees. Our best center was 6'9". And so there's a lot of dynamics into the sport and in the positions, but the vertical it's nice. It's really good for the smaller guys. The big men play a different game inside.
Until you'd mentioned that, I'd never really thought of that. That's just a sub-maximal jump for them. It's
oh yeah, that guy can go up, get a rebound above the rim, and he's only jumping 15 inches, maybe.
So you've been in this field at all levels for quite a while. Yes. I think your resume says back to the 70s. So
yeah, that was my playing days, and then I got into coaching late 70s, early 80s.
So you've seen it evolve for sure.
Oh, no doubt. Yes.
Now, speed has always existed, but when did you see the big shift on how widespread and important speed got? Like you see today, everybody's talking speed. It wasn't always like that.
No, not at all. And I think you made me go back too far. The Russians were the guys. Okay. And so that's where, like, what are the Russians doing? What's Eastern Europe doing? Why are their sprinters so fast? And these are these stories that have now evolved. They had coaching and chemicals. And so they had assistants in multiple areas, but they also, there's a guy named Remy Korchimi from, I believe, Romania. And then one of the other Soviet coaches that came over, and they knew their stuff, set aside any, drug accusations or use, but those guys knew their stuff. And we were gobbling that up in the early 80s and trying to figure out what are their secrets. And they had some really good training methods and things that we did. So the strength and conditioning profession was just, starting to blossom, and they were our source of information. They had the sports scientists, they had the sports science facilities that were committed to nonstop research, and they had plenty of guinea pigs. And the way it operated was in the early Russian days, they had they went out into the countryside, and so they identified areas where they could find athletes, and then those athletes in the city would be put into a club area, and they all kind of funnel into the national. And everybody may or may not know that the national team for Russia was the bell cow. They were the front runner of the Soviet Union at that time. You go to the Olympics, you win gold medals. You play whatever, volleyball or soccer, you win a gold medal. So it had more than just sports implications. It was a nationalistic frenzy. So there was a lot going on then, and we thought they knew all the answers. When it came to the Olympic lifts, boy, they were good. The Eastern Europeans had that stuff down. And I say Eastern Europeans because the Romanians and Bulgarians and the Russians all collectively really, really knew their stuff and, had really sharpened their craft.
Yeah, for a long time back in the old days, if you wanted to sell your product, you just put on your product the Russian secret, and people would gobble it up.
And that is true. There was I attended a conference one year, and I can't remember. I have no idea what their names were, but there was a Russian member of the audience, and he got up. That we could ask questions all the time, and the Romanian presenter, they got into an argument, and I was so disappointed I couldn't understand a word they were saying, but they were just going back and forth, hard and fast, like, oh, what are they saying? This has got to be so good. Never know. And so we finally got to where we have it good. I think here now we have a great sports science community in the United States. It really helps us.
Now, going back to, kind of what you've seen change over the years, what are some things that you can look back over your career and take away as big takeaways, like things that evolved and just changed the way we view sports?
That's a great question. And in my case, it's very comprehensive. I think the biggest part of it is that you start learning your craft and then be as creative and innovative as you can with what you're learning. Now, it doesn't mean just do something, gimmicky or something that's going to be, make you stand out because nobody does it. I always say, is that different or better? Okay, well, it's just different. Okay, it's not better. I don't need to mess with that. And so over the years, we cycled through the 80s and 90s with all kinds of gear, gadgets. The 80s was like, obviously my opinion, but between music, fashion, and training, it was almost a train wreck. We were still developing, but manufacturers or guys were, coming up with gadgets for training. And the fact of the matter is, if you want to call it old school or just fundamental basic stuff, resistance training on, with things such as a sled. And what I found when I'm back up, I'm covering a lot of ground here. Back in 66, 7, and 8, somewhere in there, I'm in middle school at the time. And we had this thing called an extra genie. And so we did this kind of an isometric kind of thing. You could adjust it and pull a rope and do whatever. And I hated that thing. It was so hard. The coaches, they had it, but they didn't know how to use it. So they just cranked it, and we're pulling against it. You might as well tie us to a train. And so, I had the opportunity to be a scholarship athlete to Texas Tech for football. And I'll be dadgum if that thing wasn't hanging from the rail at the stadium. It's like, God, I thought I got away from that. And so that extra genie became, just an anathema to me. Fast forward to, I'm just going to say 90 something, maybe early 2000s. I'm flipping through one of those equipment magazines, and I see the trainer. It's an extra genie. They just took the name and cut and pasted the trainer on it. It is 100% the same as it was in 66. Now, my point being, to your point of your question, is the development and use of equipment things is best at its rudimentary level. The extra genie provided a consistent, steady resistance. It didn't jerk you and do a lot of things. It was always steady. The proper amount of weight in a weight vest, a weight belt, hand weights, all that kind of stuff, as simple as it is still effective. I had the opportunity somewhere, I don't know where I was, but I had the opportunity. I bought up a bunch of 1 and 2 pound dumbbells so we could carry them in our speed training to work arm position and swing and so forth. But that's just as fundamental as it gets. So regardless of the electronics, the technology, the coach's eye still dominates. Now, let's fast forward that from the 80s and whatnot to the time I went to the Olympic training. uh 2000, what were we, 2002 games, I guess it was, Salt Lake City. I had the opportunity. I was given full access to SST, Sports Science Technology. And the USOC's got a thing going on there. And that was my first introduction to high-speed film, 125 frames per second. If somebody blinked, you could count the eyelashes in the order that they went up and down. It was a phenomenal technology. And so that kind of thing led us to be able to see things. And you understand, everybody watching knows that in the Olympics, in my sport, the skeleton, they were timing, I can't remember, is it like to the thousandths of the second? The timing went way minute. And so the year I was there, first through fifth place was separated by 2 and 3 thousandths of a second. In that world, a medal is your life. Now, if you get a gold medal, you got it made. But if you can get a bronze, you can get third place. We got first and second, and then fourth was one of our people, was 2/100ths of a second out of medaling. 2,000, excuse me. And so the error, margin for error is nothing. And so the use of high-speed film and looking at, details of in fact, I interrupt myself to say, we just released, I guess it was a TikTok or something where we highlighted that with one of our athletes in 2002 games, where we found a mistake in his technique, in his running. We couldn't fix it. It's just like, that's my job. I couldn't fix it. And the story is, just go run. And so what we found out was that he could do everything he needed to do with a major flaw that you would never allow. Couldn't fix it, and we got a gold medal out of it. And this is the coaching point. Know when to say no. Know when to say when, because at some point, I'm not going to be the guy to mess him up and get him a chance to fail because I had to prove myself as a coach. I proved myself as a coach by saying, do that again. That was the best coaching I could do. Jimmy, do that again. So anyway, we go forward, and I think for my work, video is my bread and butter. And and it's been helpful because it continues today. I used to have that big, I guess, VCR, VHS, whatever, 10-pound camera that I literally carried around. I had it up on the mountain in the Olympic days. And then thank goodness, the iPhones come on, and I'm still filming. I filmed yesterday with the iPhone because it gives me instant feedback. I say, come here, look at this. And you can go frame by frame, slow motion, and say, see that right there? That's killing you. And so you have immediate feedback, immediate correction. And here's the key part of coaching. It's problem solving. Problem solving is so important because you can get 100 coaches and go, well, what's he doing wrong? And have 100 people say, we agree. All right, now give me a solution. That's where the problem comes in. Well, he needs to, she needs to, are you sure? And so problem solving is the name of the coaching game to get you to any kind of next level.
That's what I find. Yeah, it's easy for somebody to pick the flaw out. Now we need to start addressing it, and in a way that the athlete can understand what we're doing. Because at the end of the day, if they can't figure out what we want and the solution provide real answers, well, then we're just spinning our wheels.
Right. And a lot of times, the answers, we do a lot of different things. Let me give you, I always wonder how this comes across to anybody might hear, but we have what we call Ray Charles technology. And so that's the example in our running. I had a problem. I could always, somebody take off running, and the faster here's a rule, and this: speed exposes flaws. You can go through the warm up, and I always talk about guys that drill great. Well, okay, you start speeding up, and it just goes out the window. We have to come up with a series, and you can see all this online, of solutions for problems that you can't use the technical mechanical stuff. If you don't dorsiflex the heel on the flexion of the heel knee, you've got to come up, and so as it comes through, and you now unfold the leg in extension as you have foot strike. What we took all that and said, okay, I want you to imagine you're pedaling the bicycle. Your foot goes up, around, and down. My foot does not kick forward. So pedal the bicycle. And that had worked for us where there was too much, forward, lower leg swing. And what we ended up finding out, we got 4 things out of a try. Just pedal the bicycle. My bicycle does this. It doesn't do this. So circle, circle, circle the foot. And we found out when they figured out that, oh, that's good. We got the knee up, we got the heel up, and we got the toe up, which are the 3 basics, right? And then we got that push down, that hip extension, so that they got the foot to the ground, the foot strike, so they could repeat it. And so it became a windfall for correcting a problem, because that's my job, correct problems, come up with solutions.
You hit a few things in there that I actually had wrote down as questions, but the one that really caught me was speed exposes flaws. So you're in Texas, you know the Texas lifestyle, the cowboy lifestyle. I spent a lot of time on horses and working with horses. And you could make a horse look pretty good slow, but the second you turn a cow in the arena, or the second you have to do a job and everything gets fast, well, then that's when everything falls apart. So yes, you have to get up there in that speed to see what's wrong if you always train slow.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And so we, I've got that saying that I use all the time, like where we go, mechanics produce efficiency, efficiency produces speed, and speed exposes flaws. So when you find that flaw, the hard part, and this is not 100%, but the hard part can be is, where's the problem? Okay. And so I interrupted myself with the, Ray Charles technology a minute ago, but if the chin tilts, if you're going forward, but your chin goes up, and what does that do? Tilts the head back. Now your shoulders go back. So if you see somebody with their shoulders leaning back, is that the problem? No, it's the chin. So, it's not, it's real easy just to be a coach and go, put your chin down. And they put their chin down, they start off, and then they speed up, and there it goes. It's the Eric Little thing from Chariots of the Fire. We're not doing that. So in order for me to get them to make sure they kept their chin down, I bought a pair of, ZZ Top cheap sunglasses. I got black electrician's tape and blacked them out, and they put them on. Now, the only way you can run and not crash is if you put the sunglasses down about toward the end of your nose and look over the top. And that fixed the problem with the chin going up. So if you still wanted to pull your chin up, the sunglasses took over, they're blacked out, and you're going to be in trouble. And it made it, they're all nervous. So they got their head down. And so obviously you do the drills like that, and then you remove them and do the contrast, and hopefully it kicks in.
It's amazing the little things out there that work. My daughter, she had a chance to work with Christy Ambrosi, and Christy Ambrosi was a softball player, and she won an Olympic gold with the USA team. But she brought a bunch of eye patches down one time to hitters, because your elite hitters are front eye dominant, whether they're, right or left-handed. The front eye is their dominant eye, but most hitters aren't. And so she put eye patches on the front eye of all the girls to make them turn their head. It's amazing what that did for our hitting.
Yeah, simple solution. We have that. We have the eye patch that we use to try to work on coordination. And so I'll take I bought some yarn, red yarn, and I put it on. We have a 36-inch runway, and I'll put it on each edge. I'll go down about 10 yards, and then a little gap, and go back on the other side and put the eye patch on. And we have them run foot in front of each other, not on the normal pattern, but they have to run tightrope down the yarn, and then move over to the other side and do it again, but they only have one eye to do it. And we've done that for coordination or balance training at speed, because, we can put the yarn down and walk on it all day long, but, let's do something with motion, movement, and speed. I want to find out what really makes it work. So if you have a drill, we have, to give you another one real quick, you flip my switch here, the 5-10-5 Pro Shuttle, Universal, blah, blah, blah. That we use that to death. And so I wanted to do a couple of things to, everything, a lot of times what you look at and see is rhythmic. And I looked at that and I thought, okay, we've been doing this for a long time. We need to come up with something arrhythmic, something irregular. So the first thing I did is I came up with a staggered shuttle. I don't know if I came up with it, I just did it. So I have now 5-8-3, and that arrhythmia causes a lot of problems at the body mechanics, because you have the long side, then you have a long run, but then you have that abrupt change, and there's a lot of, everything happens on the 3 yard. And so the 5-8-3 became a nice little arrhythmic training for agility, balance, and coordination. Now back to the 5-10-5. This is one of my favorites. We call it the wobble drill. So I put a belt and a cable on them, and they run the 5-10-5, and I'm just randomly running behind them, and I'm yanking on the cable, enough where they have control, but they can feel that I'm there. We'll do one. How's that? Can you tell I'm there? And they go, oh, yeah, I felt it. And so we'll do a couple of those, and like always, take the contrast off, and they just cut a laser line after that. So we've done little things to make big differences so they can learn body control and then teach all the mechanics of how we want to start and stop and reaccelerate and all that stuff.
Listening to you talk about all that, the one thing I may have gathered from that is you're okay with trying something even if it fails, because what lays on the other end might be something really incredible. The failures.
Oh, brother. Yeah.
Yeah.
You cannot be afraid. You cannot be afraid. I don't do anything to risk a career or risk an injury, but I will do a lot of what if. And, I say this tongue in cheek and with footnotes, but when I have the kids come in to middle school, high school, those are my lab rats. Say, come here, I want to try something. And so, I just like cool things. And just another one real quick. Top Gun was on, and we have TVs in the weight room and stuff like that. Top Gun was on, and I'm just, who's not mesmerized by those jets going off the aircraft carrier. And so we're watching it, and that catapult's just launching those jets, and the jets are hitting the engines hard, and it's like, wow, that is so cool. And I thought, I got to do that. So what I did, we know resistive training, right? We have assistive training with the cable. So what I did was I got the cable in front, and I got a guy in the back, and I put a mark down. I said, okay, you hold him fairly strong, because that, just like the jets would hit the jets, and they'd be revving it up until the catapult launched them. And so I said, I give them heavy resistance. When you get to that cone, maybe 5 yards of heavy resistance, let go. We have the rope, release, and I'm at the other end. And as soon as I saw that hand let go, then I'm pulling and just shooting them out of the chute, you might say. And it's a fun gadget, but it's just like, what can we do? Number one, to improve our training. Number two, to keep the athletes interested, because that's new and different. And three, give them the sensation like, that really does help me. Let me do that again so I can get going. And one point about assistive training that everybody I think knows, I want to make clear, is I make sure I audibly cue those guys and girls to say, look, your body doesn't know the cable's gone. Your eyes see it, but unless you tell the body the cable's gone, but you still have that stored energy, don't waste those first two steps, because how many times have you ever seen somebody on the contrast take off and stumble because it launches them and they're not ready, and they lost the rep. So what I want to do is get those steps, and I want you to say, capture that. You get that overspeed, capture it, and we'll take off all the gadgets and say, ready, go. And you can see, now they've been prepped, and you can see a marked difference. And we'll do 2 or 3 reps after that, because you can also see it diminish, because the first one is like, boom, the second one, third one, it's back to you now. We've got to find a way for you to capture that sensation. You did it on your own, go get it. So the artificial stuff is gone. So it's a real tricky, proposition to get them to learn how to be fast on their own when they are.
So you set it up where you almost get them into an ISO, and they're firing all the muscles that you would fire in an ISO. So that's, you keep running through your slow twitch to your fast twitch on through, and then boom, you hit them in an overspeed. And so they're firing harder than they've ever fired in their life at that point.
Oh yeah. We're hoping for maximal motor unit recruitment and all the good stuff that goes with those kind of contractions. And, what it's going to be, that neurological pathway, and so we've got to, if you show up and you're fast, I've had those guys. We all have. We have that guy that shows up, like I said, he said, do that again, right? He's so fast, I'm not going to mess with it. And so the people that are getting faster through the training have to be mentally cued that, hey, dude, you've got this. Now I need you to do this the same way. And you've done it. And we're, put that, mark down, that first step, contact, that foot strike. And so I need your back foot to the first step forward to be this many feet, whatever it is for that person, 5, 7 feet, whatever. And so you have to get them to mentally be able to recall what they did physically and then command it again.
I was going through your stuff all this week, and man, it's some amazing stuff. You have articles on your website, you have videos, you have a YouTube channel, you have your TikTok, and you answer a ton of questions. But one of the things I picked up in there was you started talking about the natural speed limit, the natural speed barrier athletes have. Eventually, at their peak, they're finally going to find it.
Yes.
But I kind of wonder how many athletes actually reach it.
Therein lies the mystery, and that's what I think I mentioned. And that is, the coach's job is to find that. And I can't give you any list of numbers or examples of people, but I know I've had individuals who is like, dude, that's it. I do have one. I hope he's not watching. I do have one. His name will remain anonymous, but my middle son, I know when he peaked, and I think it was his junior year in high school. And I have 3 sons, and they all played at all sports and athletic. They had a pretty decent coach, so they did well. And but the middle one, you could just see it, dude. You've maxed it, and that's just the unluck of the genetic draw. And one of them had just really great footwork, and it was kind of interesting. Number one played Division I football, had great speed, ran a 4.4, was stronger than I ever was. Number 2 played Division II football, had great footwork, but just was undersized enough to not go D1. Excuse me, I got excited. Number 3 capped out junior year in high school. He finished high school football through his senior year, but he knew that there was no division for him, so it worked out well.
So building onto that question, what brings the quickest improvement to getting a athlete closer to that natural speed barrier? Is it acceleration? Is it top speed? Is there a balance in there?
Wow. The complexity of that question is this. I know you've seen this, but you're watching. And so what is it? I had a kind of an approach, my kid's sophomore year, we're teaching, learn all this stuff, get the language down, get, sophomore and below. It doesn't have to, start there at all. But, anything below a sophomore, you're starting to teach the language, learn the drills, execute technique. Junior and senior year, I expect you to be heavily productive. And so when you start getting these kids, you're kind of looking at what's their maturation rate. You can't really measure that, but you're kind of looking to see where you think you think they are. And we've all had that kid who was 17 going on 33, and so that's the end of the road. But some of them just, you could tell like they're just a young senior, they've got more to come. And so we keep, because of all that I just said, and not having that answer in a book saying, you're done in December of 2025. That's it for you. We don't know that. So I resolved, years ago, it's like my job is to coach them up and find ways to stimulate growth, stimulate improvement. And if I have to come up with an idea, I'll come up with an idea. But I'm not going to ever just say, that's the end of the line for you, except for son number 2. So that's how that goes. Was that close to what you were asking?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's so much maturity that goes into it. It is a hard question to answer. I just didn't know maybe where the bang for the buck was. If good acceleration can help them reach top speed, is that the way to go? Or can you get them faster without a good acceleration?
Well, okay, I guess I strayed off your point here, but now more specifically, I have a saying that I had 42 athletes in the room at Lake Placid, and we're getting ready for my first round of training for the Olympic Games. And, I had to find a way to unite them with me, because it's the Olympics. That means they all come from everywhere. They've had other coaches, they have other backgrounds, they have other diverse expectations, and I had to bring it together. And so, I was introduced, and we start the discussion, and I said, if steps 1 and 2 are good, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to be fine. And you say it like that to make the point. I need steps 1 and 2 to make 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fine. And that way, that's everybody. Okay. So to answer your question, I have a baseball player, and I spent Monday, I spent videoing his feet. We video all angles, front, back, side, knee down, waist down. and looking for where's the mistake or where's the area that can be improved the most. And I'll be honest, I go back and forth. Let me get the low-hanging fruit first. No, let me go tackle the bear. Let's go get the elephant in the room first. And so it just depends on how big that obstacle or how whatever you call it, the return on investment is going to be. But the idea that if we don't get, and we do this, we have that 35-yard indoor runway. And so when we're working on that first step takeoff, we will say, all right, do this, blah, blah, blah. And I don't tell them, but I watch. And you know how it goes. They take off, and then they kind of, their eyes tell them, I can only run this far. I'm out of room. So you can see where they take their foot off the gas. And so what I'll do is I'll drop something at that spot. And then we'll go back and I'll go, all right, now try this, do this, and boom, all of a sudden they're at the wall. And I go, okay, see the difference? Oh, yeah. See that mark on the ground? That's where you slow down the first time. And so I can physically show you that what I'm trying to teach you is the best thing for you. And so I want to give it to them in, black and white concrete terms that what we're doing, and that solution might be different for everybody, but we want that first two steps rule the world.
That's a pretty good answer. That's kind of where I was going with that. And I think we spend a lot of time here on those first two steps. It seems like the second one's way harder to get than the first one.
All right. So let me interrupt because I'll forget. That's why. I had a guy that came in, he was trying to make the next level football, and football lives and dies by the 40. And so he got somebody, I met him, and he'd already been working with somebody who said, if you just get that 20 down. And so now we're getting ready to talk about specificity of training. And so he had worked so hard on his start that he was good for 5 yards and it was over. And so, he'd take off and hit, 20, no big deal, but he couldn't get past it. He'd already built the wall. And so specificity of training, you get what you pay for. And so those first two steps are crucial and critical, but we're always taking you on out and we're maxing our room out. We can't take you 10 yards because, we've got electronic timing. We can do 10, 20, 30, 40. That's not the game. We need you to be fast. And so, acceleration or start, acceleration, and top end. So that's the way we approach that. So we've got to get out of the start and get going.
Okay, that'll lead me to a question I had a little further in, but it's probably a really good time to talk about it. You talk a lot about 110s and getting your guys out and running 110s and some articles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the athlete that you just mentioned. He's hitting a wall at 20, so he's starting to deaccelerate pretty quick. So is the 110 the answer for somebody that's deaccelerating that fast, or do you back them up in, like you were talking about speed ladders, do you back them up into an 80 or a 60 and then build that up to the 110?
That's really a harder question than you might think. The 110s are that's 100 meters. So, it's the Olympic thing. It's just one of the things American football's always done. We did it in high school. I did it with the Cowboys. I run so many of those, I don't want to talk about it. But we use the 110 as a great conditioning tool. And here's the spin off to that. And I think this will answer your question a little bit better. As I do often, I get bored, right? So I thought, man, we got to mix this up. And so I had read an article in a track magazine, Track and Field or Track World or something, and I noticed it was called the World Roundup. In the back of the magazine, they had this World Roundup, and there was an article, and the Americans had gone to England for middle distance training. Everybody knows everybody. The Africans were up there, the British were there, a few Europeans, and some Americans. And our best American went over to train with them. And what he came back with, he's like, I cannot believe they train fast every day. They don't pace. They pace fast. And so there's a lot of, research in it, why are the Ethiopians, why are the Africans so much better? Bone structure, altitude, et cetera. There's a lot of reasons why they just dominate. The British doing their best, but the takeaway was the speed at which they trained on a daily basis. And so that's where we started doing, we just call it high speed training. And so, well, what percent, coach? Fast. We have two speeds, warm up and training. And that's the only speeds we have. We don't have a 50% day, 75% day. We warm up and we have a transition, of course, but we train at high speed. To that point, what can I do for the 110s to make them more beneficial? Well, we came up with high speed 110s, just that simple. And this is really a windfall for us. So back in that developmental stuff, I was a little bit younger, and I was running the 110s on primarily on Saturday on our track day. And that's the other thing we did. We worked out Monday through Saturday. We didn't have any NGB, national governing bodies, or local governing body restrictions. So we went out 6 days a week, and Saturday was track day. So we started looking at some answers to what we wanted to do, and that whole, distance training speed thing kept dominating my thoughts. So let's try it. For us, it was to do high speed 110s, and this was just strictly lab work on the track. So what I decided was, we ended up doing 12, 14 110s at the end of the summer. We did high speed 110s, which means you run at 95% of your perceived effort. No full speed stuff, but 95 is pretty good. You have a 3 to 5 minute rest. I will time it, and if you want to stay within 2/10 of that, if possible, if you run 11, don't run 10 flat. If you run 12, run 12.2 or 11.8. And so we timed it and gave you a 3-minute rest. When I signaled, you either lined up to go or you waved me off, and then at 5 minutes you got to go. And we would run, and this is random. I said, we're going to run 4 to 6 of these. And when your times drop, I can't remember what it was now. When the times go more than 1 or 2 seconds, 2 seconds slower, we're done, because we're losing speed and we're here to be fast. So we went out and we ran them, and I'm going to use 13. So ran them 13 seconds, not real fast, but we hit 13.3. I go, we're done. And what we did, we ran those high speed 110s at 95% effort, long rest. The next week, we ran our regular 110s. And this was the funnest thing as a coach you'll ever see. The carryover, when they ran their pace 110s, whatever, 14 seconds, 15 second 110 strides, they couldn't. They were coming in at 12. They wanted to run their pace, but their body wouldn't let them. And so all of a sudden it's like, oh, dude, this is so cool. So we came back, alternating Saturdays and ran the high speeds a second time. And those times dropped, and they got 6. Now we just ran 6 because I didn't want to pull hamstrings, quads, or anything. And so we ran 6, and the time just kept going down until they finally, bottomed out during the middle of the summer. But that high speed training, if you want to go fast, if you want to be fast, you got to go fast. And so we found a way to do that. Now, short stuff is easy, right? You can do 40s and 60s, and when you start getting up to 100 meters, you have to be careful. But we structured it, they executed it, and we had no injuries, never. So it was a great day for us to come up with that.
Now, is that what you would use to build the front end speed, or would you stack sprints? How would you?
No, the front end stuff. I'm gonna use that for the top end, because the high speed 100s, high speed 110s rather. That's that front end speed. That's got to be that speed endurance, that strength endurance, because that's hard. Front end wise, we have, we break our programs down into 2 groups, and this is just for identifying drills. So if I say 0 to 10, that's basically steps 1 and 2. So 3, 4, 5, 6. 0 to 30 is because we're limited indoors. And so it means we're going to go as far as we can with as much as we can. The cable pulls, we'll double up the cable and do a long pull once in a while, drag the sled. I like our sled program. I don't know. We don't load the sled up very much. I'll never forget seeing a brochure for a summer program where they had kids pulling sleds. The problem was, number one, if there was 5 kids on the cover, they all had different mechanics. Number 2, they were all different sizes and shapes to demonstrate, hey, everybody's welcome. But they all had the same weight on the sled. It's like, there's no way. And it was at that time, it was 245s. They had 90 pounds on the sled. but that kid who weighs 85 pounds should not be doing that. So, we're very careful about, how we do anything that compromises mechanics. And so that's one of the key parts of the high speed stuff is like when you start tightening up and your head starts going crazy in your arms or whatever, we're done. We're not going to suck it up and get one more because you're going to be horrible. And we don't want to teach bad stuff.
I've heard you mention that before in some of your writings is tightness travels. So once you get a tightness somewhere, it carries through really quickly.
Yeah. Tightness travels. I always use it in person where like just exaggerate it, but it's not that far of an exaggeration. We all know butt lock. If you run 400 meters before, so once that comes, it's all over for everybody. So yeah, tightness travels.
All right, now you start talking about exaggeration, and that had me to another question.
Mm-hmm.
To correct a problem, you had mentioned a lot of times you can over exaggerate the fix and bring it back. And I remember one time I was reading a dressage book, which dressage is a style of riding that the French and English and Spanish all used back in the old days when they used horses to fight wars with.
Right,
but it talked about that. It talked about if you had a horse overbending a certain direction, you had to overcorrect it the other way, and you had to go past where the problem was to get it fixed. Kind of like an old brass coat hanger. Out of shape, you can't just go back to where it should be because it's not going to stay. Is that is that the same idea?
That's the same idea because, in the words of one of my mentors, Yoda, you must unlearn all that you have learned. And so the point being is, that's go back to style and technique. That's just them. That's just the way they run. Well, when you get them young and early, it's not, for the vast majority of the younger athletes. And I don't know how you want to say that is up to a junior in high school and down, but you have room to mold and shape, I call it. So, if you want to mold and shape their running style, then number one, what's the problem? Number two, what's the solution? And, I mentioned carrying hand weights. We don't do anything heavy that makes them, change the mechanics to carry the weight, So we have, you've seen probably my carry the egg, but don't break it. There's a lot of discussion on hands, and I have strong feelings on hands and sprinting. And, there's back in the old days, it used to be, it was really like just the hand would flop. Well, anytime you have excessive hand movement, there's time involved. If it's here, you can see that it has to recover and get back. And so that's time. We don't have time. So carry the egg, but don't break it. Kept the wrist in a neutral position, kept the thumb, kind of out of the way, and let the arm do all the work, the elbow back, knee up thing that I use. And so what we want to do is find these solutions. So carry the egg, but don't break it resulted in ping pong balls. I bought a bunch of, I went to wherever I went, I found a bag of plastic golf balls and ping pong balls so we can carry them. And then that, just train that hand position. And so, that's so important because of the tightness travels thing. And coaches have developed drills forever on, on elbows, on arm swing and, standing behind and popping the hands and stuff like that. But that's arms and legs copy each other. If one's off, the other one's off.
And I had some questions in there on that. So some of the stuff you were talking about, you did some overspeed with arms, and then that speeds the legs up. You know, and to me that fits really good with top speed, but I kind of got down this path, and maybe I'm wrong, but in the acceleration part, it seems to me like the arms open the room for the leg. That's how I explain it to athletes. The bigger that arm swing is, the bigger that arm swing is, the more room that leg has, or it feels like it has, to get out there in that big first step.
Right. And I think the best way to kind of see that and illustrate or whatnot is if there's anything national or international on track and field on, I put it on the TV because I want athletes to see that stuff. And so, for example, if you look at everybody's arm on that first step after that gun fires, that back arm is just flying out there and the front arm's driving forward. And so that initial arm swing is huge. Once that first acceleration stage is done, they got to go somewhere. And the problem is most people don't know where to go. So as I always say is most people just naturally learn how to run, but they don't naturally learn how to run correctly. And so back to what's their style and what's the right technique and which one can they do. And so coaches have to learn, if you have a group of athletes, you're going to have to teach one system, and it's got to be right. And if they do what you're teaching them and it's correct, then you're going to win. So you start with that. And then what I used to do when I had groups and when I was not coaching, I was doing camps. And so this is just a little logistical thing. I'd have, coaches assigned to help me. They had no clue what I'm doing because I'm new to them. They're new to me. And so I would tell them, Coach, I'm going to stand out here and tell everybody what I want them to do. And I want you guys just to walk amongst them and correct what I said. So for example, get that elbow back, ready, start running in place and pump those arms. And now the assistants or the, staff guys could walk around and say, put your elbow back. So you can teach staff speed in mass and be useful with it. And so we would do things, whatever we could find. And that led to speed walking. Okay. I want you to pump your arms as fast as you can, walk as slow as you can. You can't do it. And so, it produces a real short arm swing because they're trying to pump their arms as fast as they can and walk as slow as they can. But you're teaching, see your arms and legs copy each other. And you're not letting your legs that they want to desperately. Now, go back and let's sprint walk, I call it, and just pump your arms and walk and see how you open up. And that's how you've got to learn to run. And then we just, speed exposes flaws. So we start picking up the speed and working on corrections from there.
Now, with what you said in there, opening up and learning how to run, as you're starting to work with more younger athletes, have you noticed that they get conditioned so much that they almost have forgotten how to sprint?
You hit the nail on the head. And that's one thing. Now, I want to make sure, even if we're talking different, but you're talking about condition from a fitness standpoint. Yeah, that's exactly right. That, let me think. This goes way back in any day. Nobody's going to out-condition us. Nobody's going to be in better shape than us. Okay, so it's universal. We're all in great shape. Now, back to the task at hand. These guys can run all day, but they can't catch anybody or they can't pull away from anybody. So we got a problem. And that's where, for just real quick and I did this for basketball, but when I was coaching football, we had regular 110 day Monday. Just line up, take your pads off. We're running timed 110s. Number two, Tuesday was Tuesday was our hard day. It was pads and all that stuff. And so Coach King is kind of goofy, but I needed to do something, and I called it, I need to open the lactic acid floodgates. And so there's no better way to do that but get on the track and run 400 meters. We can't do that. So what I did was I thought, we do 110s, and then we also have on Wednesday where we do 50s. And the reason I started doing 50s was I could time it, and we ran them. You had to run in is generous time, 7 to 9 seconds. And that's okay. So here's how it worked. Football play is 3 or 4 seconds. We're not playing football. So let's say we double the output. So you got 7 to 9 seconds to run. So now that's a football play, right? You got 25-second rest because that's our play clock. And so if you want to call it, we're now into a metabolic kind of training. And high school football for us is 12-minute quarters. So we would run sets of 12. So I might run 2 sets, which is 24 50s, or 1.5 sets, which is 18. And what that meant was at the end of the quarter, at the end of 12 reps, you got a 2-minute break. And then we lined up and went again. That was Wednesday. Let's go back to Tuesday in the lactic acid floodgates. 400 meters was perfect. Well, we're already running 50s. All right, that's a 52-yard cross the field. We're running 110s. Well, that's end to end. How about we combine them? So we would line up on the sideline, goal line, corner, and we just run across the field every 10 yards. Goal line to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and we ended up on the far 40, midfield 40-yard line. And I've slept since then, but I did that because it's right at 383 yards. There's my 400 meters. And so we didn't want to be out there all day. So we lined up the specialist first and let the lineman trail. And this stuff just happened. And so I wanted a 1-to-1 work relief ratio. So we timed the first guy, usually a wide receiver, walk back, and it was amazing how they could walk back, and it took about the same amount of time. It took about 60 seconds or 55 seconds to walk back, go. We only ran 2 of them. And I want to tell you what, that changed our fitness world like you wouldn't believe. And the lactic acid floodgates opened. And, I didn't worry about the lineman. And the thing about what I did, I never had a punishment in conditioning, because if you couldn't do it, you're struggling and you're already being punished. So I don't need to have, double jeopardy, because, you're dying on that 380-yard run. I don't need to worry about you being anything. So we did it. It worked. We ran the table for a few years. I think we were 33-1-1 over a 3-year period. Started racking up state championships. So it worked.
What you said in there made me think about something. So yeah, your slowest guy's giving you everything he's got.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You really ought to be worried about your fastest guys, because they're the ones dialing it back, because they know that this guy over here is never going to make it.
Well, we know our guys, and every coach knows their guy, and go, hey, Tom, what are you doing? Let's see, I need you back here in 52 seconds. And so we had great athletes, or a great mindset. So, those guys had pretty good peer pressure. So they ran, and they knew that, the guys are watching them, and they got the locker room to deal with. So I think we had a very successful run there when athletes, carried each other and kept up with the Joneses and did what they were supposed to do.
Now, you had a quote in one of your articles that said, there is no answer for speed except for more speed.
Thanks. That's my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, it really stood out. So understanding that whoever you're playing is trying to build speed, so you've got one option. You've got to get your guys faster.
Yes. And so when it comes to that, like I said, there's a lot of that I cannot control. The gene pool has already said it. But we all know this too. Your guys might beat my guys in 100 meters. But game speed, we've got. And because, hopefully your best guy doesn't get into the secondary and we can't catch him. But with our speed, the element of speed and quickness, and I always say quickness is speed in a small space. And so everything is speed. Quickness is speed in a small space. So our first step, we're going to cut you off, that kind of thing. So what we're doing is developing, just the physical trait to where they're just play at high speed. And that way, if, we just get outrun, we get outrun, but we're not going to get outrun because we weren't prepared.
You'd also talked about in there a little bit, and I think there's a consensus across the board that weaknesses open the door for injury. So identifying weaknesses, I'm sure it's way harder at the elite level than it is at the high school level, but identifying weaknesses and starting to improve them.
Well, let me make a couple of quick comments. First of all, I learned this in professional sports, being in the NBA, MLS, blah, blah, blah. I learned this. If you're a professional athlete, it's really not a matter of if you have surgery, but when you have surgery. I don't care if it's a little finger, a shoulder, knee, ankle, or whatever, but you're going to have surgery. It's just, that's the way it went. During the Cowboy run, you could almost see the beginning of the end kind of thing, because where's Tom? Yeah, he's coming off knee surgery. Where's Larry? He had shoulder surgery, and so it's like, dude, it's catching up now, because here in this, with the Cowboys, the problem was, just use 3 years as an example, we played almost 4 seasons, because we're going to the Super Bowl. So we had our, 16 games, and then a minimum of 4, I guess it is, I didn't really count, 4 more games, for the playoffs with, division, conference, and Super Bowl. By the 4th year, we're in our 5th year of playing. And so give or take a game or two, but the point being, we're playing more than anybody else, and our guys are racking up reps and pounding, and, it's just going to happen. So that said, with the injury situation, what we also want to do is be able to say, okay, I never, ever have or will say, if you work out with me and you do this program, I can prevent the injuries that you dread. That's impossible. Now, what I hope to happen that I think might be a little more able to provide is we can reduce the severity of your injury, and we hopefully will help have you in a situation where your recovery is quicker. And all these are, they're not absolutes, but that's the hope. And that's, the best thing we can do with our program. Best offer we can make you.
Now, talking to you and getting ready for this podcast, I mean, you come off as a very humble guy. So to coach
Thanks.
at those high levels, did that help manage the highs and lows? Especially like when you're talking about the Cowboys and you're on a Super Bowl run, nobody can touch you. How did you keep yourself grounded and then manage the ebbs and flows?
Oh, well, that's the thing about pro sports, Mungo Pawn and Game of Life. You learn a lot of things. Like I'll never forget. Oh, this is funny. I'll never forget, but I forget his name. I'm in the weight room after one of the Maverick games. If you didn't play 20 minutes, you're with me after the game doing whatever I have you do. And so one of my guys came in, did his 20 minutes. He left because a manager came in and said, Tom, Coach Jones wants to see you. And that's never good. So he came back in, shook my hand, said, thanks for everything that cut me. And I mean, that's how abrupt and how hard it is. He played a little bit, worked out hard with me, and then when it got cut. And so the point is this, everybody's replaceable. You better take advantage or be thankful for the time you're there, because me, I mean, the only guy I know that can't lose his job is the owner. And I was taught a long time ago, there's only two kinds of coaches, those that have been fired and those that are going to be fired. And so in the pro game, that's how it is. And so every time, we'd lose a head coach, it's like, what about us? And so you just wondered. And so you do play under a small cloud from time to time if the team's not doing well. I got blamed. The Mavericks were on a terrible run one year. I mean, we were not good, and they were firing coaches. I got blamed. I was in the newspaper that it's like, golly, is there no, everybody's vulnerable, and that's the game. So you know what you're getting into, you learn it, and you just deal with it. And so I don't know what else to tell you other than the fact that that's the game. That coaches that get fired are going to be fired.
Learn to become so flexible that you can maneuver in and out of all the different sports you've been able to find your way into and then gravitate to somewhere else. How did that become something you were able to do?
Back to the beginning here, excuse me, the product of timing. I knew a guy that introduced me to the Cowboy strength coach at the time. We had a discussion, and the Cowboys were coming off a run of the same guy for 20 years. And so they brought in a new guy, and he needed to build a staff. And so I knew, so you start knowing people. The Mavericks had a, keep up with the Joneses approach. And so, I had a opportunity to interview and go against, I had a plan. I had all this in my head from the day I could, coach, period. I said, how far can I go? And I just tried to polish my craft. When I had the opportunity, I traveled, went to clinics. I'm the guy in the audience. Coach, what would you say about? And I'd ask questions. I read everything that was published and printed, and I talked to people, and I traveled. I talked to people. I traveled. And I had the opportunity. And when I was hired, I made calls. Hey, what are y'all doing now? What are y'all, in the NBA, we're just getting started as a profession in strength coaching. So I'm calling guys. And so, what do y'all do? How do you handle this? How do you handle that? And you start learning and finding out that, you've got the tools. That's a little high. You got the tools. Now, how does it apply to your clientele, let's call it? Well, I'm in basketball, pro basketball. First thing I got to do is deal with levers. I mentioned that a minute ago, because I had a guy who I believe he was 7'1", and we're working out. And I mean, I know he's 7'1", right? It's obvious. Well, we sat down, and that was my biggest tutorial I ever had. we sat down on the bench and we're going to talk and we're wrapping up and we're looking eye to eye. He's 7'1", I'm 6'2", and we're sitting, walking, talking eye to eye. That means from the waist down, it's all legs. And I knew this because he's already tall and had a high split. But first of all, we're going to squat? Man, I don't know. We're going to have to figure out ways to do leg work because I am not putting that bar on his shoulders and seeing what his femur and, PFL is going to be, PFJ, and find out how much I can damage him. So you start to figure out ways to go around those limitations on the players. The guards don't want to get, some of them do. I mean, one of my forwards couldn't lift enough weight. I mean, I don't score. They brought me here to rebound. It's okay, Terry, let's go rebound. And so he would lift the gym and he cleared out the lane, he'd clear out the paint, and he could rebound. Our best shooter, I would dialogue. All right, so what do you want to do today? How do you want to handle this? How do you want to approach it? And players would say, well, whatever you say. And so I knew we were comfortable. So at the pro level, dialogue is crucial. High school, and I'm not talking, don't ask. If you have a question, the time to ask me is when we're done, not in the middle of it. But with pro players, we dialogue because they're as good at what they do as I am at what I do. And so we got to merge that and let's say, well, what works for you? What's good for you? Well, I don't want a lot of leg work. Okay, not going to worry about it. And so what I would do is come up with little back doors to get them going. So here, just do a couple of these single leg moves. I just want to make sure you got some, protection in your knees stuff. And so we'd sneak it in. And before you know it, without saying, here, get under this squat bar or get on this leg press with 400 pounds on it. Just here, give me a little single leg work. And so we found ways to make them comfortable and grow the program. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely does because you're dealing with a totally different person. You're dealing with somebody that knows their body well. They've been in and out of this, they've been in a system their whole life. They understand the sport. They love it. So yes, you have to develop it. You're a team and you have to develop that team.
Mm-hmm. And just, a side note to all this, the strength coach is an important part of this, but those guys are tied to their paychecks. I mean, let's don't make any pretend to this. And so you're not going to mess with a man's career, you might say. I've heard that said before in different areas, but it's critical. It's their paycheck and your job. Excuse me. The high school kids are learning. You're not going to hurt them, but they need to learn how to push.
Now you hit on some points in there, and we actually talked about it pre-interview, but expanding your knowledge base, constantly learning. What's been the most influential thing that you've stumbled across in your career that really changed the way you see strength and conditioning?
When to say when? This is the trigger key. I'm emphasizing how important this is. I ran across too many strength coaches with programs that were building a monument to themselves. And I've seen those on paper and on the whiteboard in the weight room. A guy asked me, I went into a whiteboard in a high school weight room, and it was like, how much pulling are you going to do? The hang clean's not enough. You got to do upright row and you got to do, power pulls. I mean, how much pulling you want to do? And that's one day. And so strength coaches want to build a monument to themselves. I've been asked to look at programs, and it's like, dude, the kids can handle a lot, but you have speed, agility, conditioning, flexibility, plyometrics, or explosiveness somewhere that you've got to build in everything, and they'll get stronger. And what we found in unofficial lab work is that less is more. And so I had kids that I can't put a number on it because it's just observational. You have to have a good eye for it. But I had a guy in high school that was just like, dude, he's a freak. And so when he hit at his body weight, when he got over 300 on the bench, I had to figure out what to do with this guy because he was unstoppable. And I think we hit 345 for 100 and something pounds. And I had to pump the brakes because he's going to break. And so you learn how to cycle individually within a group. You want that guy to stand out. I need him to be healthy and to be able to play. And so it's a real fine line on how you turn them loose and rein them in.
Now I've kept you on here quite a while. I could ask you questions all night, but everybody's got stuff to do. The one question I had is I was listening to some of your interviews, and you were talking about working with Barry Switzer and, Jimmy Johnson and legendary coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah. How does that work? How do you find yourself working together with guys like that? Were they super demanding? Did they give you autonomy? Legendary coaches obviously get there for a reason, they all be different.
Yeah. But you answered the question in the question is like, you are at that level because, those coaches, Switzer and Jimmy were phenomenal to work with in each different ways, but they're there because they are really good. They think you're there because they think you're really good. And so, they just, they talk to you as a peer, as another coach. And, you weren't, down here, hey, Bob, come up here, I need to talk to you. It's like, Bob, I need these guys to this, and this. And so the pro coaches talk to you eye to eye. They talk to you as a peer because you're working with the same players. We both have the same thing on the line, win or go home. And so that was one thing I think I really noticed and learned as much is like, I need to earn their respect, and now I have to keep it. I earned it when I walked in the door because they assumed I'm at that level. And so now I have to demonstrate that every day. And, we did a lot of things. I mean, I ran 110s till, I got cross-eyed with those players to earn their respect. And so you're there, act like you belong. And if I don't know, I'm going to go find out. If there's something that comes up and, let me look into that. I'll get back to you. I try to keep that, to a minimum. But if I don't know something, I'm going to go find out, whether I read it, call, do whatever. And so again, you never stop learning.
Well, Coach, this has been phenomenal. We were able to work this out really, really quick, actually, from the first introduction. So all the time you spent on here and answering any question I could throw at you, it means a lot to me.
Well, thank you. I'm just like I said in the beginning, I've been blessed. I think I'm obligated to, if I have anything that can benefit anybody or share with anybody, I'm obligated to do that, and I'm happy to do it.
Well, I do appreciate it. I hope the listeners get a lot out of it, and have a great evening.
Thank you. You too.